presenting a program tonight in collaboration with Central Library downtown, the EVPL, and Renny McBride here will be one of the speakers as well. So we're sort of divvying up what we know and what we're doing with Karl Kae Knecht's materials now. So I'm glad all of you could come out tonight. I'm guessing most of you have heard the name Karl Kae Knecht or remember him. A lot of people still do, unfortunately. I'm guessing younger people don't, although actually I've had younger people give me some things that belong to him because their parents or their grandparents knew him or worked with him at the Courier, and it's been very interesting. Before we get started, if anyone does have to leave early, there's an elevator right around the corner. Most of you probably know that or maybe even came up on that. If you could use that, that'd be nice. And also, if you need any restrooms, they're on in the basement, the lower level. So you can take the elevator down to the bottom floor, go down the long hallway, and you'll see them. So, if you have any questions, you'll see a lot more in the program as well. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started here. I think this is. So the program is Picturing Evansville, the work of Karl Kae Knecht, 1906-1960. Those are the years that he spent down at the Evansville Courier as editorial cartoonist. And I'm going to give sort of an outline of his life, especially his career here in Evansville. And Renny will talk about his cartoons, which the EVPL is digitizing. I would like, before I go on any further, this program is funded by the Institute of Museum and Library Services and administered by the Indiana State Library. That is, both libraries here in Evansville were fortunate to get funding this past year. I think we were two of only about, 7 or 8 libraries in the whole state that got funding. And it turns out neither of us knew what the other one was going to do. But Willard Library has nearly 6,000 photos from the Karl Kae Knecht collection. And EVPL is digitizing thousands.
About 4,000.
Renny will give you a lot more detail in a few minutes. Thousands of his surviving cartoons from the University of Evansville's collection. So they're doing the city a great favor. I think he's important. Karl Kae Knecht. He's one of the most unique, fascinating individuals who ever lived in Evansville. You'll get just a glimpse of that. Just don't have time to go into his full life, which I could easily do. He's so fascinating. I'll give you just some ideas of what he was like and what may have helped form his work. Both his pictures and whether they're photographs or cartoons, depict daily life in Evansville and give us a good glimpse of what life is like, especially in the first half of the 20th century and beyond. And of course, cartoons go beyond that scope as well. So, move on. Okay. This is just a very bare outline of his life. He was born in the Dakota Territory before it was even a state. Iroquois was now South Dakota in 1883. He studied at the Art Institute 1903 to 1906. Graduating the year that he came to Evansville. He moved from the Dakota Territory to Freeport, Illinois, up in northwestern Illinois, where his family basically was from. So he spent most of his childhood there, and as is typical of many small towns at the time, the late 1800s, early 1900s, going to the theater was very popular. The traveling circuses came through these little towns, and he just, from a very early age on, developed some interest that he maintained zealously throughout his life. He came here in 1906, September, was hired on the spot, a young man, just out of school. He had been working part-time as a clerk in a railroad yard in Illinois until something came along, because he was a very creative person and trained, obviously, at a good school. He married a woman named Jannie Elwood Moore in 1918. He'd been here a few years, and that was actually a lucky move for Evansville because she was from an old family. She was tied down here, and it pretty much kept him here. People think that's why he spent his whole career here, because he got job offers as his celebrity status grew, and he was pretty prominent nationally. He got job offers which he turned down to stay in Evansville. When he retired, he was known as the Dean of American Editorial Cartoonists, and it's thought that maybe he still holds the record of having worked at the same newspaper for that long a period, 54 years, his whole life. So he did finally retire in 1960. He was in his late 70s at the time. So he seemed to have a lot of energy throughout his life, traveling all over the world, well, not all over the world, all 50 states, Europe, Canada, Mexico. I mean, he just had this real zest for life that a lot of people don't exhibit. And he died in 1972, relatively recently. I mean, the lifetimes of most of us here. The photos you see are from this collection. Some are of him. Obviously, he didn't take them, but they're part of what was sometimes known as the Courier Collection. They came from the Courier in the 1970s, I think late 70s, not too long after his death. I don't know who was responsible for the transfer here, but I'm glad that they came here. It's one of our most, if not the single most important photo collection of the many photos that we have here at Willard of Evansville. This picture, which I used to overlook because it's in bad condition, it's faded, you can see some of it's missing, those white spots show where pieces of the actual photo are gone. That's the earliest known photo, I think, I've ever seen of him at the Courier. And up in the far upper left corner of the photo, that's his handwriting, which I now well recognize. He's written 1906, so that's right after he started working at the Courier. You see he's a young man sitting there in a tie, looking very serious. He's proud of his first full-time job, and he's doing what he wants to do. No matter what all he did during his life, you'll get a hint of some of his many activities. The one thing he always described himself as, first and foremost, was editorial cartoonist, or cartoonist. That was apparently the most important thing to him. That's what the Courier office looked like at the time he would have started in 1906. It's at 125 Main Street. It's this building right here, and you see the Courier sign. You can tell it's an early picture. I don't know the date, but you know it's early because the carriages are still horse-drawn here. Herman Candy Store is here. Some of you will remember that name there. That block, of course, is long gone. I think it's where Old National is now. Jumping ahead a few years, I thought this was an interesting picture because it shows the inside of a newsroom, the editorial staff of the Courier. And the date is 1921, which is a year after Mayor Benjamin Bossy, who was still mayor at that time, took over the newspaper. He bought it, took it over because apparently he had been writing things that he didn't like about his administration. So how do you deal with the competition? You just buy them out. And Knecht is right here. They all look very somber, very serious, just sitting there formally. Now, I understand that he was one of about 2 people who were department heads or had very, I guess you'd say, high-up jobs who survived the cut once Mayor Bossy took over. Most of the others were dismissed. So that says a little bit of something about what they felt his worth was and his contributions to the community. One of his many interests, outside newspaper cartooning, was aviation. And here he's seen in 1911, June 1911, out at the old fairgrounds in the area where Aiken Park is now, just east of South Kentucky, south of Washington Avenue. And that's him sitting behind the aviator Charles Whitmer. 1911 was just less than a decade after the first flight of the Wright brothers, so aviation was almost unheard of. This is the first known plane here in Evansville, and he would always be fascinated with current events, anything new that was going on, progress, whatever you want to call it. And he wanted to take a flight. He was prepared to go up and take a flight with this aviator, but they found out the plane, which you can see is very lightweight, would not carry two people. In fact, there were two aviators here. One of them actually crashed. Fortunately, was not hurt before the first plane actually got off the ground, to the delight of the audience. Several thousand people packed the grandstands. He finally did, maybe 2 years later, 1913, take his first flight. And in May 1919, he got another opportunity. An Army plane happened to be nearby, Mount Vernon, I think. Somehow he got hooked up with the pilot and got to take a flight around Evansville. He circled around Evansville. And a few years later, he wrote a long description of what he felt, what he saw from the air, which is very enjoyable to read. You can see the pictures, not the best, again, a little fuzzy too. If you saw the size of the camera, you'll see a picture one in a minute, that he had to hold, and he's sort of hanging out of the open airplane. I'm amazed it looks this good. You can recognize, of course, that's Evansville's riverfront downtown, and the Curry Hotel there. So that way, that's one good clue as to where the location is. He once said one cartoon is worth 1,000 editorial words, and I think he learned early on the power of his cartoons, of cartooning. A lot of people might not take them seriously, they're just cartoons, but a lot of them did have an impact, a lot of them did sway people in their thinking, a lot of them did have deeper meanings and messages to them. A political cartoonist, editorial cartoonist can have a lot of impact, as you know. There he is, 1920, sitting in his office, and I like this picture. We have lots of pictures of him at work. In his studio, this is a picture of an elephant. He was obsessed with elephants, especially animals in general, circuses, zoos, and of course he was one of the primary founders of Messrs. Who here in Evansville a few years later. Somewhere up there in the club, there's a picture of Mayor Bossy. Maybe you felt you had to keep it there, I don't know. The little, looks like a ribbon. It's actually a little label that he wore somewhere. I don't know where he wore it, but it was in his collection. There were little pinholes. He had it pinned to his jacket, I guess. It's just another indication that no matter where he went or what he did, that was his title. That was his preferred title. I'm a cartoonist. Here he is giving a chalk talk in 1936 at the right, a little bit younger on the left-hand side there, packed up. He was very famous for that. If you go to both libraries here now have newspapers. There's a big article in the paper a couple weeks ago about EVPL's newspapers, the new database, we're digitizing newspapers. You can do a lot of research that way by typing in names, and I did that with his name and came up with a lot of hits for the different chalk talks he did throughout the tri-state. Well, around the state, I mean, very, very early in his career, so he was already well known and well received in these communities. He's drawing there Mr. Public, a figure you'll see in a lot of his cartoons representing the general public. His wife there, who shared his love of animals and apparently love of Dave Park. We have probably a couple hundred pictures of the construction of Dade Park, which later became Ellis Park, and the early years of the park and the Knecht photo collection. So he spent a lot of time there, obviously. I think I have some little, I found some little membership cards that he carried from there. And down below there on the left, his wife holding the first lion cubs born at the zoo in 1929, a year after the zoo opened. I don't think they let you do that now, but it's a cute picture. They never had children, and they had a very long, apparently happy marriage. She spent a lot of pictures with them, she traveled with them, they had the same interests or developed the same interest, and she was definitely his helpmate. Another thing he did besides photographing and drawing cartoons, he wrote a number of columns. One was called Say Hey. There were others about theaters, about entertainment in Evansville, and personalities. He liked to hobnob with famous people. If they came to Evansville, he would meet them. I know at one point in his career, I think the 1940s, he went out to Hollywood, met some celebrities, some real movie stars out there. Here on the left is the actor Douglas Fairbanks. On the steps of McCurdy during World War I, he was here to promote the sale of war bonds. Knecht's future wife was there on the far right. This is Ed Roush. Does anyone remember Ed Roush? A lot of people know. Yes. And when I first saw this picture, that's Knecht on the left, meeting Ed at his home in Oakland City in 1920. He's already, Ed Roush is pretty well known by then, but look at what he's carrying. I couldn't figure out what it was, but that is the Courier's first camera. I think they acquired the first camera in 1917, and this is what he was lugging around while he was hanging out of airplanes and going anywhere to take pictures of people. Joe Cook, which is another name that will be familiar to some of you. It's lost to a lot of people now, but he was very famous in the early 20th century, early to mid 20th century. I think he died in the 1950s. He's visiting in Evansville. He grew up in Evansville, never forgot his hometown, came back often, supported. He was a good friend of Knecht's, who knew everybody who was famous or a celebrity or whatever. In fact, before you leave, we have a mini display here of some of his drawings, and a wonderful one we just acquired from a very generous donor shows Joe Cook in it. So if you have a chance to look at that, do that. That's a Courier colleague on the far right there. French Lick, Indiana. I forget the names of the two men on the right. One, I think, is the Lieutenant Governor of Indiana, Van Orman, something like that. A clown. I mean, he loved to hang out with circus people, entertainment people. It's Knecht on the left. And this I just added to the program. Where did I? Well, I have a copy. The original's on the table over there. I scanned that in. In 1926 or so, Knecht was one of the founders of the CFA, the Circus Fans Association, which was a national organization and it's still going strong. And in fact, there's an international branch. And he, for the first decade or so, prepared the newsletter. I think it was a quarterly newsletter, the White Tops. And I did not know until I saw this very recently on eBay while I was surfing. It says, published in Evansville, Indiana, which makes sense. It just had a post office box, but I'm guessing it was published by or at the Courier's offices. So that's one of his legacies. And of course, one that he's really famous for here in Evansville is helping to get the zoo started. He knew everybody in the entertainment world, anyone who had animals, and he sort of spearheaded the drive to raise money to acquire Kay the elephant, you see here, who arrived in a huge parade, one of the biggest parades ever in Evansville in 1929. And standing there. There he's meeting Kay when she first arrived in the United States from Boston. He went up to meet her. He was so excited. And he actually, I mean, all these years he kept his job at the Courier, full-time, drawing daily cartoons, involved in a lot of other things, the founding of the zoo. He was actually the zoo director for 2 years in the mid-1930s, among many other things, and writing the newsletters for the CFA and writing articles for Billboard magazine, Variety, and it's just amazing. I don't know where he got the energy. He also dabbled very briefly in politics, running for the Indiana State Legislature in 1928. He lost in what he called a Hoover landslide. The Republicans did very well that year, but he did get more votes than any other Democrat, so he was happy with that. But I think that was his first and only chance, exploration into politics. That's just a picture of him. I'm guessing from the way he looks, maybe the 1940s, again in his office, clattering away at his typewriter. But you can see some of his pictures, some of his drawings hanging around him. Also, lots of animal heads and souvenirs and things he acquired. When he wasn't working, when he had vacation time, he would travel the country. He would follow circuses around, and he acquired quite a collection. When war did break out, it's right here, he followed Evansville soldiers down to Camp Shelby in Mississippi as they enlisted. This is before the United States was formally involved in the war. Guthrie May is one of the men there, and one of them, I think they're all Evansville people. That's Richard Denbo, who was a clergyman here and he served as chaplain during the war. But he was a big supporter, and you'll see in his cartoons, of American troops during the war, really pushed the sale of war bonds, and actually the U.S. Treasury gave him a citation, a special award after the war for his promotion of them. He had done such a spectacular job. 1954, when a lot of people, he was in his early 70s, and a lot of people would have been retired by then. I don't know if the Courier did this to sort of convince them it's time to start thinking about it or what, but anyway, the city declared Karl Kae Knecht Day officially on that date in 1954. Up to that point, from 1906 to that point, his cartoons had appeared on the front page of the Courier. After that, they went in the back pages on the editorial pages, so I don't know if they were trying to tell them something. There was a huge turnout with congratulations from President Eisenhower on down to Indiana Governor, almost anybody you could name. He was that well known. And the honors just kept pouring in. Here he's honorary ringmaster of the Shrine Circus here in Evansville, 1955, but received similar honors in other states. The Boy Scouts had some sort of circus of their own out at the stadium, and I don't know what that's made out of, cardboard or something, a big likeness of Karl Kae Knecht. This was his final cartoon, which I copied out of the newspaper, and his caption, and with this we crawl out from under. He's down here, you can hardly see him in the midst of all the clutter. Here's his drawing inks, his little elephant there, his symbol, and this is the way his office actually looked. There's files of photos and things, drawings, and so he finally formally retired, although he continued on occasionally contributing a cartoon as editorial cartoonist emeritus. He had received an honorary doctorate from the then Evansville College in 1953. I'm guessing that helped form a bond with him. About a decade later, he donated, and after he retired, a newspaper article said about 8,000 to 10,000 of his drawings. And that's only about half of what he had done in a lifetime to the university, and many of those are getting digitized now. Here you're seeing that they had a special exhibit in '68. That's Dr. Wallace Graves. You may recognize him, and Knecht's wife there. He was too ill to attend by this point. Many of his drawings are spread out in several presidential libraries. One of them, the Truman Library, and in some of his papers I found this program he picked up on a visit to that library. That's his writing on there. And he said, well, they told me they have about 25 of my drawings here. And I went on their website recently, and they do. His name still pops up. The other letters, letter from the White House that the president's secretary wrote to him acknowledging his receipt of some things that Knecht had sent him. Of course, he was in Evansville's Who's Who, and in the, of course, national Who's Who in America from about the 1930s on. When he did pass away in July 1972, J.C. Curlin, who had worked with him for many years at the Courier before he went on the radio, paid him a very nice tribute over the radio, reading from one of the scripts. Karl Kae Knecht, calling him an Evansville institution in his own right, which no doubt he was. Once again, his drawing table, he seemed to take a lot of pictures of his drawing table. He was proud of it. He said he used the same one during his entire career, and it's still in existence. I know where it's at. And his little, I guess, again, it's trademark elephant there. So, okay, so that's just a bare outline of his life and give you an idea of some of the things he did and how he contributed to our community and elsewhere. And so now I'll hand it over to Renny.
Switch out PowerPoints.
Excuse us for a second. Changing over here.
Sorry about that. My name is Renny McBride. I'm the local history librarian. I work down at Central Library in the Indiana room, and I also do just general reference work upstairs. As Pat had mentioned, we received a grant from the state library to digitize materials. We've had one previous to this. We digitized a lot of World War II materials, including the shipyard photo collection from the museum and things like that. So this is our second time around. So we've partnered up with the museum again, and we've scanned their collection of cartoons. And we also are scanning the University of Evansville cartoons. And at this point, we're completely done scanning, and we're just cataloging them now. So there's about a little over 3,000 cartoons up available on our website right now. And I can show you that website if you want at the end of this program if you'd like. Or I can show you a little tutorial of how to search it too. And I'm always available down in the library there 40 hours a week. So you can always give me a call, and I can help you walk through it as well. Okay, so we're just going to kind of get started. Pat did a great job on his bio, so I'm going to pretty much skip this slide and we'll just move right along. She mentioned that he went to the Chicago Art Institute, and so that there were several other famous editorial cartoonists who also attended the Chicago Art Institute, and I think that that's one of the reasons why he decided to go that route. He completed his coursework, became a cartoonist for the Courier, moved down here to Evansville, and the University of Evansville's collection actually contains a lot of some of the drawings that he drew for his coursework. So I'm going to show you some of those. And you can see in this one that, I don't know how to use the laser here. Okay, so here's his signature, which has changed a lot over the years. You know, it seems like while he was in school, he was kind of developing his own style and sense of self and what he wanted to be as a cartoonist. So I just kind of thought this was an interesting photograph or cartoon or drawing, I guess, at this point. He also was really obsessed with hobos for a while. We have several cartoons with hobos, which was a big popular culture kind of thing, back in the time when he was doing these drawings. There are several of these cartoons with, people. You can see that they're washing their clothes in this little pond, shaving in a little broken piece of glass. There's a train in the background. So there's several of those. And he actually used some color on this one, which I thought was kind of an interesting, to show a difference in what the styles he was using. This one I kind of like. This is called self-rear portrait. So this is a picture that he drew of himself from the back, which I just love. And I love the print that he drew on his shirt. If I could buy that shirt, I probably would. So I just thought that was pretty funny with the giant ears and everything. And then here's the last one of his, that I'm going to show of the Art Institute works. And there are several more of these available online, like I said. This is Abraham Lincoln chopping wood in 1830. It says, "The young man of 21 in 1830" is the title of this drawing. You can see that obviously Lincoln was still a big influence in the area. And if he was in Illinois at this point, which I'm pretty sure he was, Lincoln obviously is a big figure in Illinois as well. So, and there are actually several cartoons that have this pose sketched out on the back. He reused a lot of paper. So, this, you'll see a lot of, when we've been flipping through them, there'll be, just like a really light pencil sketch of a guy with his leg up on a piece of wood or something. So, all right. So once he moved to Evansville, he became really involved, obviously, in the local affairs of the area. He was one of the biggest supporters of Evansville and was always very vocal through his drawings about his love of our city. And he drew tons of cartoons about local events. I mean, everywhere from politics to sports, crime, you name it, there's a cartoon about it pretty much. And he also aided in founding Mesker Zoo. So I'm going to show you a couple of the few that I just randomly picked out. I mean, this is kind of going, there's 3,000 of them, so it's really impossible to go through every cartoon and pick the best because they're all really great. So here's one political cartoon that he drew. This is the Greasy Administration. Over here on the pillow, and he's sick, taking his medicine, it's kind of, something that's kind of an interesting continuance into today. This medicine bottle, or this alcohol bottle, whichever one it is, says, "Proper sewage as Bee Slough, Pigeon Creek, Howell Sewer, etc.," which is something that we're still dealing with today. When did we ever get away from the sewer problems? This was in 1934. I mean, we're talking, over 70 years. So I thought this was kind of an interesting cartoon. It's kind of very particular of his style, and you can see his little signature elephant down here in the corner. I think he's reading a little book. I can't quite make out what he's saying there. But sometimes he talks, sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he's just doing something in the corner. Sometimes the elephant will be saying something about a local affair, whereas the cartoon itself will feature something more world affair based or something like that. So here's another one that I kind of enjoy. This is about the airport, something that we all still, talk about today. We're dealing with some of that stuff. So this is the airport. This is a WPA shovel, and they're trying to, bring the airport here. He was a huge supporter of aviation, as Pat mentioned. There's several cartoons with airplanes, airships, blimps. You name it. There's probably a cartoon, maybe except helicopters, I would think. But so. Here's he's trying to convince people that this airport's a good idea and that we need to build runways in order to get airlines here to provide passenger transportation. And then also, one other thing that we've noticed is that down here in the corner, we've got Kay the elephant, and then there's this weird little panda bear. Nobody else, the panda never says anything. The panda's just there sometimes. And it was only in a few cartoons we just noticed this little panda. Being Kay's friend, I'm not sure where he came from. He's the only other really small animal that we'd really seen, except for today when Pat showed me that there's a donkey over here in one of the cartoons that she has on display. So, I don't know, again, I just think that the aviation is such an important part of his life. I thought this was an interesting one to showcase as well. And then this is another thing that we hold dear to our hearts today. This is a cartoon of where they wanted to put the new federal building downtown. You can see this says Dress Plaza and Riverside Avenue, so this is right on the riverfront. And then you can see right here, this half block could be used for public free parking, which is something that we still argue about today, downtown parking. So, it's funny to see, as you're going through some of these, seeing some of the same themes that we deal with today still coming up over and over and over again. Public parking, street parking, you name it. It's an interesting setup. So here's the set out of the view. This is the river up here, and this is where they were proposing the building to be, and this is for parking right here. So, and then I think if I didn't delete it, this is what's actually there today. Parking, yeah. I thought that was pretty funny. I just stole this image from Google Maps, so I just kind of got curious what actually went into that spot, so I looked it up. All right, so here's some more local affairs. We're kind of shifting gears a little bit. This is the Evansville Civilian Defense, I don't know, I feel like there's another word, Corps or something like that, where they were to administer first aid, provide shelter, help people in case there was some kind of emergency during the wartime. So you can see that they, over here in the corner, they have observed lights during blackouts, and so the whole cartoon is black. And he's, got the central figure here with his flashlight and his gear. And then I think, my eyes are sort of, Kay is saying, who said it can't happen here? Which is something that a lot of people really did worry about. In 1942, things were definitely kicking off. We had a lot of war industry happening here. There was a lot of, issues with secrecy and making sure that people weren't saying obviously wrong things or doing wrong things. Even though there is a huge photograph collection from the shipyards, they were all, pretty much kept under top secret until just recently they were released and then donated to the museum. A lot of them have rubber stamps on them that says, not to be seen and all these kinds of things, restricted photograph. So, I mean, it was definitely a worry in this area with the kind of industry and things that we had going on here. And then here's another fun one that I thought. This is the Evansville Centennial. So there's a big parade that he's advertising. Here's a little song that we had written for it. And then there's this giant parade route, which is like the longest parade I think I've ever seen. It goes all the way down from Garden Park down to the river, and then it cuts back up and over to St. Joe. I mean, that's an incredible parade. I don't think anybody would be willing to march in a parade that long these days. But anyway, I thought this was kind of fun, showcasing, his spirit of the community, the Centennial, and really getting behind those things that we did here. All right, we're going to switch gears to a little bit more depressing. Due to his line of work, he covered a lot of national and world events, a lot of disasters and things like that. His career spanned many disasters, including, the earthquakes, the Titanic, and we're coming across more things, even some local things like mining accidents that were regional to the area, and I'll show you one of those. So here is one of San Francisco earthquake. Now this was in 1906, so this was either right before he started working for the Courier or, right, I guess I don't know the year, or the month, whenever he started. It was in April, right? December? Okay. And so he would have worked here probably then for a couple of months, I would assume, in 1906. So there's they had sent the, National Guard out, or whatever the equivalent was at that point. There's this person sleeping here on, government-owned blankets and things like that because they were providing aid, and you can see the burned-out rubble all of the city in the background. There's actually another one of San Francisco earthquake where it has a picture of what would have been the Golden Gate Bridge, and it says it's the Black Gate Bridge because it's a lot of destruction. So here's one that he did about the Titanic. This one, I guess, did print. Down here in the bottom it says no caption, just this. And you can see the, hats and things floating around in the ocean. I mean, that was a big news topic of the day. So here, of course, is the flood. This one was January 22nd, 1937. So you can see that, people were kind of gawking, looking over the railing. This is 1913. It was 48.4 feet. It's a variety of different kind of scenes of people talking about where the flood waters had come up previously and things like that. This was another thing that we've found a lot, is that he would clip out cartoons from previous drawings, that he would go back through the newspaper, find one of his pictures, and actually glue. This is pasted down to another cartoon so that he wouldn't have to redraw it, basically. So, so this one actually, I had put this one in the program, and then I pulled it in favor of this one because I knew the date of this one, and I couldn't be certain of the date on this one. So you'll see right here, the Kay the elephant is saying safe from autos now as you look at the river, but eventually this whole area was underwater. People wouldn't have been able to get through that area. All right, so here's the one about mining, and actually wrote myself a little note because I didn't have any context on this one at all. So there's a whole family here. There's a mother holding her head crying, lots of children crying. There's a baby over here in the crib. And this actually is from July 14th, 1939, there was a mine explosion in Providence, Kentucky's Dubin coal mine, or coal company, I'm sorry. 28 men died in that explosion. And you can see here there's a Courier. He always liked to put the Courier in his cartoons sometimes. So there's a little Courier here that says 28 dead and things like that. And Kate over here saying your donation, big or little, will help. Because the problem was that the mine owners say that they have no way to help the families of the people who had died. So they were basically like, oh, sorry, your family of 5 is on your own now. So there, he was trying to help solicit some donations. And that was another big thing. He was really into charity, constantly talking about, donating to tuberculosis campaigns and the American Cancer Society and things like that. We just came across one of those today when I was approving stuff. So he was constantly trying to get people active in the community and to help their fellow, citizens, basically. Oh, traffic in Evansville. It seems to always have been a problem. He was very expressive on his concerns about traffic and traffic safety and obeying laws and things like that. There are some really great cartoons, that is for sure. So this one is kind of tragic at the same time as being helpful. This is a little clipping of a traffic tragedy that happened when someone was trying to cross the street. The driver wasn't paying attention and killed this man just trying to walk across the street. And he got off of all charges. He was not even issued a citation, I guess. Or he was just like, they said, oh, you're guilty of this, but we're just going to let it go. You don't have any punishment. And for some reason, I think that just drove Knecht crazy. No pun intended on the drive part. But he, so he drew this detailed cartoon, and he would always put traffic laws in there. There would always be something like, this is how you turn left on a light, and here's how you turn right, and this is how it's supposed to be. People need to follow the rules, This was in the 1930s. Okay, so this one, I'm not exactly sure what the heck is going on in this cartoon. It's all about parking, and I don't know how a car can possibly get into these spots without completely mangling another car, but trying to explain how to park, I guess. I thought this one was really interesting because it actually had the streetcar in this top one. So how you're supposed to drive around the streetcar tracks. I just thought that was kind of an interesting. We don't have to really deal with that these days. And I can't imagine having one more distraction on the road. And then this one, he was pretty serious. This is death. And his, counter here, he's counting up all the death tolls from traffic deaths. And there's all these, newspaper headlines. Head-on collision kills 3, truck kills, mother, children killed, die in crash. It's just, he was really, felt very strongly about traffic laws. And then I also kind of enjoyed this one. It's from which pages do you want to learn? And it's got the rules and regulations of driving. And then, this basically like you could go to jail and there's all these gravestones and court fines and there's this person here in prison. I just thought it was kind of an interesting look at how, he was basically like, if you don't follow these rules, you're going to kill people and you're going to go to jail. Like, that's how he wanted that to go. It was pretty serious. And I think this is the last one, which I thought was kind of interesting, is the speed. So this person's going about, 70 miles per hour, and here's the speed limit sign of 40. And then K is down here saying, man, I cannot read these little captions. It says, and 20 to 30 in pounds. So he was commenting on the highway speed limit, I'm assuming, but I thought that was interesting. We have a lot of speeders in Evansville. I'm probably guilty of that myself sometimes in a hurry. Okay, so he was also big on public services, health. I kind of mentioned a little bit about that. He was really into cleanliness, parks, pollution, and things of that nature. So here's one that I thought was really interesting. It's the Bainey County Hospital. They were trying to change it from a county-owned hospital to owned by the state. So there was a big issue about that. This was in 1935. So you can see they didn't want the county to not have control, because then our county residents would have to go outside of the county to get treatment, which didn't seem to make any sense to him, which doesn't really. So here's another one that I thought was kind of fun. When I first saw it, I think there's a hilarious little pig here that caught my eye when I was looking at it. It's kind of a funny little cartoon. It's home and public eating. and facilities, you know, all these soaps and mops and buckets, and it's basically all the soap bubbles are pushing this skeleton, disease-looking person in this pig labeled filth out of the corner of the picture. So he was very into cleaning. This was in 1943, so this one I think is kind of interesting and slightly pertinent to today's culture. This is, they say they can't do anything till 1948 when funds will be available to hire a smoke commissioner, but we've had a no smoke ordinance since 1940, and this was a cartoon from 1947. So he's saying that they've had an ordinance, but they can't enforce the law because there's nobody to enforce it because they can't afford to hire someone to enforce the law, which, I mean, seems kind of strangely similar to some things that we deal with today, where, you know, it's always like, well, we want to do this, but we don't have enough money to, especially for public services, you know, potholes and salting roads and things like that in winter. So this is his John Public character, who looks a little different in this cartoon, holding his nose, and you can see all this smog and nasty produced by our factories, I suppose. And then a little bit more lighthearted, this one is Mother Nature. This boy has some, you know, poison ivy or something. So maybe this was something that was happening in his life. Maybe he'd gotten poison ivy from something. But he's got drawings of what the poisonous plants look like, and then this little doggy down here saying, "Just to touch me after I run through it, we'll give it to you." So he's kind of trying to explain, like, don't let your dog run around in poison ivy and then play with him, because you're going to get poison ivy too. So. And you can actually see down here, one of the interesting things in the bottom margins is a lot of little sketches, so you can see he was almost planning out something else that he was going to be drawing. We don't know which cartoon it is that he was drawing. Sometimes you can tell, sometimes not. All right, so we'll switch. I think this might be the last topic I have. Yep. So this is the wartime, obviously. I mean, well, not obviously. We had a huge war history here, and his career, of course, spanned many wars. You know, and he actually did draw some things about veterans, so there are some things with Civil War, the Spanish Revolution, Mexican War. I mean, there's a lot of different things that he covered, that he drew cartoons about, topics about, but not necessarily lived them firsthand. Obviously, the Civil War would be way before its time, but he was a cheerleader of sorts when it came to the wartime effort. We've actually been coming across several like kind of Cold War era cartoons as we've gotten towards the end of the University of Evansville collection, which I find really fascinating. A lot of things about espionage and spies in the United States, and you know, relationships between all the different countries. I mean, it definitely got political about a lot of those things in that time period. So here is the very first one that I liked. This is from 1917, so it's kind of an Evansville soldier, or a soldier, I'm assuming from Evansville. There's a couple of other uniforms hanging on the wall, so this one is going to be World War I, I'm assuming, and they're heading off to wartime. That's just the only part on it, just the sketch. This one is also World War I. It's from 1918. He wrote the date right down here in the corner. And I had someone question this the last time we did a program, and I don't know if they're here, but I did do some research on this. I tried to find a matching uniform for this, and it definitely matches the Army soldier from World War I. I'm about 98.5% sure that this is a World War I era cartoon. This is a female factory worker up in the top corner. It says, "There'll be plenty of work for all of our returning boys, and also for those who filled their places." So it's kind of an interesting cartoon, I find. There's a lot of Rosie the Riveter, you know, history, especially even here, that there was also this cartoon that he drew that also featured a female worker here on the home front. And here is another cartoon. This is Destruction in England, basically. This is his caricature for England. You can see all the bombing and crazy, and it says, "With little rest at night, they are planning 2 rest days a week." So it's kind of commenting on World War II in a different country. So not necessarily Evansville's point of view, but his, you know, worldly view of what's going on, and his support of our side, I guess, quote unquote. This one I thought was pretty interesting as well. This is Mayor Dress shoveling a clump of grass, and then in the next cartoon, it becomes Republic Aviation's factory, and the Kay the elephant down here saying, "Go get 'em, boys." So he's, promoting our local industry, promoting the World War II effort that we had here on the home front, showing the community the groundbreaking of that factory. Let's see here. Gosh, these are kind of hard to see. This is kind of another wartime. This is a cartoon up here at the top that's the factory workers kind of loafing around, not doing much of anything. And then down here at the bottom is obviously some people here in a combat situation. And it says, this one soldier saying, "Yeah, folk taking ration and all such to help keep our stuff coming." And then it says, "Can't you just see the fellows back home working themselves to shreds to get us more stuff," basically. And so they're over here, he's commenting on the fact that people are not working hard enough in factories on the home front to provide the people who are sacrificing and putting their lives on the line. So it's kind of his raw attitude that Pat had mentioned earlier as well. And here is I feel like I researched this so long ago. This is Eisenhower here, and he's saying there will be no VE Day proclamation until every enemy pocket is wiped out. So it's just kind of another comment. This is April 18th, 1945. So just kind of said, Kay is down here saying, "And don't be misled by rumors." So obviously there must have been some kind of news coming out about the end of the war, but they're not saying that it's over until it's over. And then this one is actually from 1951. So this is one of the first ones that we really found about the Korean War, or the conflict, I guess I should say. So it's kind of an interesting take. This was one of the more recent ones that we had scanned when I put this together. We've since put up a couple hundred more cartoons, so I'll probably add some more wartime items in here. But you can see the political characterizations of all these countries. They're trying another ceasefire note, things like that. That was from January 1951. Okay, and then here is one of the last cartoons this is the last cartoon of my presentation here. This is a cartoon that says, "Thanks to you all, Evansville." This is Carl sitting here in the middle, I guess a trampoline of some sort. There's all sorts of circus animals. This says, "Thanks to you all," with this little asterisk, and then down here in the corner it says, "The biggest piece of canvas available." And it says it's something like the big top tent for a circus. He was trying to play a joke on that front. But this was printed on July 21st, 1954, which was that Karl Kae Knecht Day. And the little article on that day was, said that he was the oldest active journalist in the city, 70 years old, has drawn 17,000 cartoons, etc. So it was just kind of a thank you for giving him this special day, his recognition for all the work that he had done over the years. And that's the end of that. And I can show you briefly where to find our Vanderburg Public Library homepage, which is evpl.org. There's a couple different ways to get to this. If you click on our research tab, which is right in the middle of the page, I don't know if you can see where my mouse is, and then you'll see one that's called Digital Archive. It's on the left side under Online Research. This takes you to our landing page where you can see all of our online collections. We've scanned all of these items in-house down at Central Library, and it takes a second for it to load. Come on. So we have an image collection, we have some city directories, we have ebooks, we've got postcards, we've got yearbooks. Then we've got our World War II collection, which is that other LSTA grant I mentioned right at the beginning. It's got a lot of shipyard photos. We've digitized newsletters from factories, a lot of different stuff in there. It's a pretty interesting collection. We've got our Centennial collection, which we put up last year. And then at the very bottom, of course, because it's the last one we've put up, is the Karl Kae Knecht collection. And you can click right on that blue link. It'll take you to the landing page just for that collection. So you'll be searching just in that collection. And we can do pretty much a search for just about anything. I'm going to type in Cold War, though, because that's something I didn't get to touch on. And we'll just do a quick search, see what we get. Looks like 45 results come up with the words Cold War in them. And then
my arrow keys don't work, so we'll scroll down a little bit. You can kind of get a preview on the left side there, a very small picture of what the cartoon looks like. It's kind of hard to see. Any of the subject headings and a very brief description in this third column. If you do hover over them, another box will pop up. Sometimes the picture will get a little clearer. But we'll go ahead and click on one and see what it says. Just to give you a basic idea of how this works, I guess. So, and you can, it shows up kind of small, but it actually, we've been scanning them at a very high resolution. So there's this little bar up here with pluses and minuses. You can just click right on that plus minus. You can just zoom right in. So you can get a good feel for what the whole cartoon says. And then you can just, to move it, just click and drag. Kind of like in Google Maps. I don't know if anybody's familiar with using that, but so it looks like this is also a Christmas cartoon here. Down below is where we're working on our descriptions. So any information that we have about the cartoon is going to go in this bottom part where all the text is. So you'll see the transcript, or description, I'm sorry, the room representing the Big Five and the United Nations, etc. Any subject headings that we felt were appropriate. And then we were developing a list of keywords that we feel best describe a lot of the cartoons. So things like Cold War, World War II, since that's a sub of words that people would think of besides the library version, which is World War, 1939 to 1945. I mean, that's not exactly how the normal public thinks about it. That's our librarian brain working for you. So we've tried to come up with a list of some keywords that we thought would help just aid in searching, some easier keywords and things like that. So we've got all sorts of information there. We've got the original date if we were able to find one. Some of his cartoons don't have a full date. They just have a month and a day, or they'll have a month and a year, or they'll have a year, or we'll be able to figure it out somehow through contextual clues and things like that. But if you're ever in this database and you spot something that's incorrect, please let me know. It's very easy for me to update them, and I can change it easily enough. But it's a really great resource. Like I said, just updated a bunch, put a bunch more up today, about 300 or so, I think. So it's definitely a work in progress. We've got a couple hundred more to go through yet. We've got to finish by the end of May. Fingers crossed that we make it. But it's definitely been a very interesting project. And I guess James McLeod, I don't know if he's here, he said he was going to be here. Hi. He's going to be working on writing some information up about Karl Knecht and using his cartoons and images. He's a professor from the University of Evansville. He spoke at the library in November, so maybe we'll have him come out and do a book talk eventually for us. So that's about all I have today. If anybody has any questions for Pat or myself, shout them out.
You get a retired in prohibition.
So we got about 28 results with prohibition. Let's see here. Click on one here. So I just picked a random cartoon from the list. And we've got a big fish, it looks like. I know that there's one of people hauling liquor across the Ohio River in a boat. So this is a public opinion, 18th Amendment. So 20 million mail votes. First Literary Digest poll. So I think he was kind of, in favor of repealing this law. It seems like there's a lot of. Let's see if we can find something else that looks a little bit more like boats. Maybe this one was one that we just put up. The picture. Sorry, the internet's working a little slow. A lot of cartoons to pull from. This is a national convention, it looks like. And Kay is saying, right here where both Republican and Democrats went so wet. And this is John Public sitting here underneath this giant picture. that's labeled Prohibition Party. So there's probably some more Prohibition cartoons floating around in the collection that we just haven't gotten to yet. Like I said, we're still working on getting all the cartoons up. Let's see if we can find another one here.
Well, can I add quickly? In his photo collection, there are a series of photos. He seemed to enjoy going around the city following the Women's Christian Temperance Union at the beginning of Prohibition. He likes to photograph little old ladies smashing liquor bottles.
So here's another Prohibition one. Does anybody else have anything they want me to search? I can search for that too.
Did he take a position on civil rights?
That would have been 63.
Yeah, I haven't come across anything like that. And actually, to think about it, I don't think I've ever really seen any African Americans in any of his cartoons. I mean, that's not something that I've seen necessarily. I've seen one suffrage cartoon came across my desk earlier today, but it was England. So.
And same with his photographs. He photographed white people rather than African Americans.
That's a question for you. Did he photograph African Americans or not?
Very few.
Things. There's a few of Israel and things that will have a darker skin tone to them, but for the most part, all of the caricatures are all white, I would say.
Well, he retired in 60, and the civil rights movement
Wasn't until later.
Just starting.
Yeah.
So,
I'm trying to think of any other major issues.
Yeah, he always shows his bottles, little bottles of ink. You
I'm
know?
not sure. Sorry. I'm totally messing up your video on it. You'll see in a lot of the cartoons that there'll be pencil markings. I'm not, yeah, he would do pencil. I think this one has some. You can kind of see some of the pencil marks here and right underneath the words Washington. It just really depends on the cartoon. This one isn't a very good example, but there are a lot of cartoons that do have pencil mark, and then he draws over it in ink. So I think the one that has the pollution where the guy's holding his nose and it's all, I think that was something more chalky or something. It definitely does not look like ink to me. Just judging from my husband drawing stuff.